Well, hello, everybody, and sadly, for the very last time on a Tuesday, this is The Slate. I'm Adam Kaufman, joined alongside a couple of your favorites and mine, Matt LaMarca and Gary and Thorne, DraftKings contributors. They cover a whole wide array of sports. The bulk of today's program, maybe even all of it, will be fixated on baseball. But yes, if you tuned in on time, you heard me right. We are now at the very beginning, fellas, of the final week of this program, a show that started back in the early days of COVID, right along with Madden Sims. And, well, the Madden Sims, they continue on. But, of course, the broadcasts on top of them, they went away quite a while ago. And now this show is following suit. It's been a lot of fun, though. I've enjoyed these almost daily hangouts with you guys.
On a Tuesday. Yeah. I've enjoyed it. There'll still be opportunities. The sweat is still going to be on Monday through Friday, so it's not like we're all going away completely, except for maybe Kaufman, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be on to the next thing.
You'll be sad if suddenly I'm gone. You will feel responsible for it with that comment right there.
No, you'll still call me to do your show. We'll be okay.
Arian, we should expect to see you regularly on the sweat in the mornings, I imagine.
Yeah, unless my alarm clock stops working. I think I'm pretty good to hop on the sweat, but the slate is a nice perspective change. We're a lot closer to first pitch. We know some lineups by this point. So it was always nice to hop on here and generally talk about a lot of football and a little bit of baseball. So in a fitting way, we're going out with a lot of baseball, and I kind of
Plus, I'm really not on the sweat anymore. I really do this, so we all know that this is the much sharper show. Let's just put it that way.
Well, who knows? Maybe in time, and I don't speak for the programming department, we will have another iteration of this type of program just to be able to bring you guys back that much closer to lock. That would be wonderful. But in the meantime, like you said, let's fixate on what we do have in front of us that we know about, which is a whole bunch of games tonight on the diamond, guys. Let's look at it. And of course, the action begins about an hour and 20 minutes from now with the first games. You got the scorching hot Braves. That offense is very, very good. Plus, you have Spencer Strider on the mound. That game is in Philadelphia. You have the Orioles with Kyle Bradish on the hill, who a lot of people are quickly looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook and going to that over 2.5 runs tonight with this game in Tampa against Tyler Glasnow and the Rays on the other side. Blue Jays and Miami, another one that is in the 6 o'clock hour, as well as the Royals and Tigers. So, Gary, let's start with that first collection of games here. And what are some of the things that you are looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to making money on the Marlins. I guess we can start there. Yep. As longtime viewers will know, we sometimes get into little areas of little spats, let's call them, with our favorite teams. Matt has had Let's Bet Against the Mets nights. I'm having a Let's Bet Against the Blue Jays night, but this is grounded in statistics. Yusei Kikuchi, despite his very nice win-loss record this season, has been about the same pitcher he was last season. He's giving up over 2 home runs per 9. The FIP is ugly. The expected ERA is ugly. The Sierra is ugly. His ERA even isn't really that good, but it's better than all those numbers. And he's going up against a Marlins offense that is just one of the best in baseball against left-handed pitching. They have a 118 WRC plus against southpaws this season. They lead the league in batting average against left-handed pitching, up at 301. They're going to score some runs tonight, and Perez on the other side has been fantastic since being called up by the Marlins. He was a top 5 prospect pretty much by any pipeline site, whether you use, Baseball America, MLB.com. He's been fantastic. And there were some rumors last week that maybe he was going to be transitioned to a bullpen role. I know they're probably worried about his innings and that going forward, but for now he's in the rotation and he's dynamite, and he's going up against the Blue Jays offense that has been ice cold the last 7-8 days. So minus 120. I know the Marlins are favored. We don't love giving out favorites on the money line necessarily, but I was expecting to see this maybe in like the minus 140, minus 145 range. So I think there's a lot of value at minus 120.
LaMarca, anything with this game you're drawn to?
Yeah, I also had the Marlins as a play today. I'm not quite as bullish on them as it sounds like GT is, just for the sake that Like Erie Perez, while his ERA has been great, it's at 1.8. A lot of his advanced metrics are in the high threes range, which are still good numbers. They're just not quite as good as what he has done on the mound so far. So I'm a little bit worried that Perez is just slightly overvalued at the moment. And also the fact that the AL East, for the most part, has just owned baseball this year. The AL East in non-divisional games this year is 186, 128, and 7 on the money line. So the AL East is just so much better than every other division. And I agree with GT. I think the Marlins are the correct side, but it's just those two things that are preventing it from being like a smash play for me.
Called you GT twice. I'm not sure I've heard him say that once in the history of this show before today.
I mean, we have a Slack that doesn't involve you. I get called GT quite a bit.
How dare you? About 70% of the money, by the way, is on Miami for this game. Looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook and the numbers on VSiN's site, about 76% of the handle. And again, as noted, Miami minus 120 favorites here in this one. You do have about 75% of the money in handle going on Miami plus 1.5 runs, but obviously you're not getting a discount there at minus 200. What about another spot here in that first slate of games, Gary? And I'll go back to it here on the DK Sportsbook. I had mentioned a lot of people, a lot of the, some of the discords that I look at, or some of the just, people that will put sharps that'll put their picks
You're
out
a
on
true degenerate,
Twitter.
Kaufman. Let's be honest.
You're not lying. This is 100% true. I will not run away from that. And the more different places that I saw people hammering Kyle Bradish over 2.5 runs, more money I was putting on either Tampa first 5 or Tampa first 5 run line, or Tampa just straight up on the money line, even though it's not a great number, minus 175. How do we feel, LaMarca, about this game?
I don't really have a great feeling about this game. I think the Rays are still overvalued from the, insane run that they got off to start the year. If you look at the last like 30, 40 games or so, the Rays have been kind of an average baseball team. And Baltimore is really good in their own right. So I don't have a huge edge, towards Tampa in this contest. I think if anything, I'd probably look at the Orioles, but for me, this game is pretty much a non-play.
Garen?
Yeah, I do think there might be an opportunity here to just take the Orioles in the money line at plus 150. Obviously, Tampa's win-loss record at home the last 3-4 seasons is immaculate. They're one of the best home teams in baseball. But Tyler Glasnow is a little worrisome in his last start. I mean, obviously, he's still working his way back from a long-term injury. Just didn't have the feel for his pitches in that game against the Athletics. Maybe it was just a weird series in Oakland. I don't know. But if he's not 100%, and like Matt said, if you go back across the last 30 days, the Rays basically have like a league average offense. They're hovering around a 102, 103 WRC plus, which is fine, but they're not the best team in baseball by leaps and bounds like they were back when they were playing just the easiest schedule in the world to begin the season. So yeah, at this point, the Orioles, I think primarily I like playing the Orioles against a left-handed pitcher. That's when they're at their best. But at plus 150, you're not going to get them at that big a number that often at this point. So there might be a buying opportunity there.
Fully recognizing that neither of you two, and this is not a criticism, this is, in fact, it's probably a compliment, neither of you are people that like to just follow the money, obviously. If we are looking at this game, as well as a little bit later on a game we can talk about, the Padres and Giants, those two games are both getting about 80% of the bets, 90+% of the handle, both on the over in those two contests. Over 7.5 runs, Orioles, Rays, and it's 8.5 Padres, Giants. Are these games that, whether you're thinking about DFS or just straight up betting the over, are these games that you would flock to in terms of looking for runs?
I mean, I would say the Padres are interesting tonight from a run scoring perspective, just because DeSclafani has been really bad his last 5 starts. The book on Anthony DeSclafani throughout his entire career is he struggles with left-handed bats. The good seasons, he's able to suppress that slightly more than the awful seasons. But I mean, in the last 5 starts, he's really been getting beat up by left-handed bats. They're slashing 340, 386, 660. So the Padres are a team that can throw a number of left-handed bats at you. Obviously, of their like core 4 pieces, only one is left-handed. That's Juan Soto. But, you know, you're going to get your Rougned Odors, your Matt Carpenters, your Trent Grishams at the bottom of the lineup. I think they could score some runs tonight.
Good lefty.
Go on, LaMarca.
I said Jake Cronenworth, good left-handed bat. That game being in San Francisco, that's never really a place that I like to look to for offense. It doesn't mean that there can't be runs. I think the obvious place to look for offense tonight is Cincinnati, right? I mean, it's kind of the obvious place to look for offense almost every night. Cincinnati, in some aspects, is a more hitter-friendly venue than even Coors Field, at least from like a home run perspective. And we all know that in DFS, right? Like homers are the name of the game. You need home runs. So you've got a red hot Reds offense, just got Joey Votto back in the lineup. You know, facing a Rockies team that kind of stinks outside of Coors Field, but you know, they get a good matchup against Ben Lively. I think that this game could, like if we simulated this slate 1,000 times, this game ends up as the highest scoring of the night. I think at the highest frequency.
That's a game that I was looking at the Reds and some of the first half numbers, you know, looking at obviously Cincinnati, whether it's on the run line or Cincinnati to whether it's a team total for runs or just straight up on the money line winning after 5. What do you think about that play?
I mean, I would just caution if you like the totals, that might be a fine way to go, but Ben Lively is terrible. So if you're taking the Reds in any capacity to win the first 5, I mean, his last 3 outings have been rough, and he survived his last outing, but he still gave up 10 hits in the process to the Royals, which is exceedingly hard to do. So
yeah, and I'm of the belief that like you want to fade the trendy teams. You don't want to flock towards the trendy teams. Sure. And no team right now is trendier than the Reds.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody loves Ellie De La Cruz. They're in first place now in the NL Central. Like, this is not the time that you want to be hopping on the Reds bandwagon because all their numbers are going to be inflated.
Yeah, it was last week when you get them at plus 850 to win the Central. That's when you wanted to hop on the Reds.
Well, I was going to say, it was you, Garion, right? That weeks ago, like basically when De La Cruz came up, so not that long ago, but that said, you know, I realize they're 4th or whatever in the division right now, but this team is going to win the division. This is the time to put money on them.
Well, it was just like, this is a terrible division. So if a team is actively trying to win, and by calling up their 2 best prospects in the last month, I think we can say the Reds are trying to win. It was just a situation where it's like anyone could win the NL Central. It wouldn't surprise me if anyone did.
I still think the Cardinals are live for what it's worth.
Yeah, sure.
Where else are you looking tonight, LaMarca? I obviously, I sort of fixated on the first portion of games, the ones during the first hour of the slate. But overall, you know, tonight it's a hefty docket. So where are you looking?
So I think my favorite is fading the Cardinals, as I just said that I think that they have a chance to win the division. Yeah. But no, it's more has to do with the pitching matchup, right? The Cardinals are sending Jordan Montgomery to the mound. He is a fine left-handed starter, right? An average guy. He's not somebody that you're actively going out of your way to target. But the Nationals have been pretty good against left-handed pitchers this season. You know, the Cardinals, who are known as a team that hit left-handed pitching well, the Nationals have been better than them in terms of WRC plus. So I think it's a good matchup for the Nationals offense. And Mackenzie Gore, I just like the upside that he brings to the table every time he takes the mound, right? Like, his numbers have come down a bit after a really good start to the season, but he's striking out around 11 guys per 9 innings. And I think that whenever he toes the rubber, he has a chance to pitch a really good game. So I kind of like the idea of grabbing the Nats as home underdogs here, plus 125. I think that's a pretty good price.
Garen?
Well, another underdog spot. And I know Matt feels the same way about this game as I do. You know, he wrote it up over on DK Playbook from a betting perspective. I wrote it up from a DFS perspective, but oftentimes that research can lead you in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
Battle of Los Angeles tonight. I'll take the Angels on the money line. It seems on paper like a bit of a lopsided pitching matchup. You've got Clayton Kershaw going up against Reed Detmers, but Detmers is one of a handful of pitchers in baseball who, if you're just like looking at guys in the second half who are going to explode, everyone loved Reed Detmers coming into the season because he had this amazing spring training. He's still been really good. He's just not been the luckiest guy in the world. His strikeout numbers are fantastic. If you go back to late April, he's got a 2.81 FIP and a 28% strikeout rate. I believe it's across his last 9 appearances. He's been fantastic. He just tends to not be the luckiest guy in the world, like I said. And I think Detmers versus Kershaw, even if you want to give the slight edge to Kershaw in that particular matchup, I think the offensive edge right now goes to the Angels. I mean, the Dodgers, since the beginning of June, have a pretty pedestrian 96 WRC plus. It's fine. The Angels have crushed left-handed pitching all season long. Shohei Ohtani is the hottest hitter on the planet right now. I just think there's value at plus 115 on the Angels.
You mentioned Detmers obviously in the strikeouts. So is there, whether it's this game or another game, are there any favorite props that are jumping out at you tonight?
I mean, minus 120 isn't terrible. The Dodgers, for as underwhelming as they've been in the last couple of weeks, they are still not a team that strikes out all that much. They still have the lowest chase rate in all of baseball in the month. So I would prefer if the Detmers prop was at plus money at 5.5 as opposed to minus 120. Honestly, I didn't look into props too much as of right now. I can go research some if you want, but you can ask Matt about his next money line play, and I'll come back in 5 minutes and let you know what my favorite prop is, bud.
Well, Lamarca, I mean, first on the props, and if the answer is no, that's fine. I can throw you
no
guys
props. I don't do props for the most
all right,
part.
I don't know why I like the strikeout prop, Garion, because it's not been very good to me historically, but I'm just I'm drawn to it for whatever reason. And a couple that I was looking at tonight, unders on strikeouts for both Ryan Nelson in that Diamondbacks game in Milwaukee. He's sitting at 4.5. And also we were talking about Tyler Glasnow earlier, under his 7.5. How do you feel about those?
I mean, I don't hate the Nelson prop in the sense that he himself is not a strikeout pitcher.
Correct.
Hovering around 5 strikeouts per 9 for the season. The Brewers obviously are one of the highest strikeout rate teams in all of baseball. So you kind of have to weigh these two things against each other. But in general, I don't think Nelson or Colin Ray is going to last very long in that particular game. I think the total for that one is at 9.5. I like the over in that spot. So yeah, just through sheer Nelson not being a strikeout guy and him maybe not lasting more than 4 innings in that contest. I mean, this is someone who was already being talked about by Torey Lovello as, you know, the process of a pitcher getting kicked out of the rotation is always the same. It's like the manager has to come out and confirm that he will be making his next start, which happened this week with Ryan Nelson. And then he'll get blown up tonight and he'll be out of the rotation. That's kind of just how these things go. So I don't hate the minus 4.5 there. I would also say if you want to chase some plus money, another team that strikes out a ton is the Cubs. They have one of the highest strikeout rates in baseball. Oviedo is sitting at 5.5 at plus 110. He's been incredibly inconsistent this season. So, you know, fade him or ride with him at your own risk. But he does have strikeout stuff. His slider is a very high whiff rate pitch. He has the capability of reaching this prop. And again, the Cubs just very high chase rate, very high strikeout rate, pretty consistently this season.
That's another game I really like tonight, by the way, just as far as, you know, it's not plus money, obviously, but, you know, inching toward even money versus, you know, some of the more heavy favorites. The Cubs at minus 130 in Pittsburgh feels like a good buy to me.
I wrote up Pittsburgh today.
Well, that's I mean, make your case then, by all means.
Garion kind of made it for me with the strikeout case for Oviedo. I just think that Marcus Stroman, he's fine. You kind of know what you're going to get from him. He's not nearly as good as what his ERA says he is so far this season. The Sharps are all over Pittsburgh tonight. It's just one of those games where I thought Pittsburgh was the correct side. So
Now, how about Gary? And I know you wrote up you mentioned DFS. Obviously, it's it's not just the DraftKings Sportsbook. We got DraftKings as far as making contests tonight too, and chasing big money that way. Who are some of the guys that jump out at you?
I mean, it's a really weird slate. It's honestly one of the weirder slates I can remember seeing from a pitching perspective, because you do have 4 guys above 10K tonight who are all deserving to be there. You've got Garrett Cole. You have Framber Valdez, like just guys who you expect to pay that kind of money for. At the same time, you've got below $8,000 Dylan Cease, who, yes, has been incredibly inconsistent this season, but is still like 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. Justin Verlander is $7,300 tonight, which I can understand as someone who has watched Justin Verlander pitch this season, but I don't know, man. Justin Verlander with anything starting with a 7 just seems wrong. And then, our boy Reed Detmers, $6,900 tonight. I think Detmers of those 3 guys is my favorite for reasons we've already discussed. But yeah, if you want to take a chance on someone like Verlander at 7.3, I know he's kind of gone back and forth with looking like Justin Verlander, then getting completely blown up the last month or so. But other than that, I think George Kirby is someone who definitely has my interest tonight. He's $8,700. Of Seattle's quartet of like young, really fun to watch starting pitchers, he's probably got the lowest strikeout upside of that group, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, the Yankees can't hit at all. They are batting below the Mendoza line in the month. They're hitting 192. That is the worst mark in baseball. They've got a 69 WRC plus, also the worst mark in baseball. Kirby 2 weeks ago shut them out over 8 scoreless innings. I just think Kirby's in a really nice spot. I think because of how stacked a pitching slate we have tonight, his salary is a little bit lower than it usually would be. He's a 9K guy in my book. So at 8.7, I think there's a nice buying opportunity there.
I'm seeing we talk about it all the time. You can get projections at a bunch of different places, but it's looking like Garrett Cole is the projected highest ownership guy tonight anyway. About a third of lineups. Clayton Kershaw behind him, about a quarter of lineups. Does that make sense to you, Gary? And among those, you mentioned there's a quartet of guys that are north of 10K among the pitchers. Those 2 in particular as being the highest owned. Makes sense?
I mean, I would stay away from Kershaw personally. Like I said, the Angels are just really hot right now. They hit left-handed pitching fantastically. Garrett Cole is always going to be popular. I understand that. It helps that he's not the most expensive guy on tonight's slate. But at the same time, I think there's opportunity if you've got enough value plays in your back pocket. And I think Reed Detmers is one of those guys. Nathan Eovaldi is in a nice spot tonight. I mean, look at that White Sox lineup. It was already underwhelming considering some of the injuries they have, but no Tim Anderson tonight, no Luis Robert. It's gross. And they already had the second lowest WRC plus of any team in June. They already are striking out in 26% of their plate appearances in the month. Like, it was a lineup that even at its best was a pretty good matchup. And now you've got them, without Robert, who is far and away their best hitter. It's pretty underwhelming to say the least. So I think Eovaldi's in a nice spot as well. Obviously, you got to pay through the nose to get Eovaldi in a lineup, but I think his ownership will be lower just because his price point is that high.
Some of the value guys tonight, Ben Lively is jumping out as a guy with pitching value.
Don't use Ben Lively.
Disagree?
Don't use Ben
Just
Lively.
play Justin Verlander. He's $200 more.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Justin Verlander, the overall numbers don't look great for him, right? But his bad starts have come against the Braves in Atlanta, in Coors Field, and against the Rays, who are the best offensive team in baseball against right-handed pitching. Like, that's very excusable to me. And now he has to face an Astros team. First off, it's his former team, right? So you get a little bit of a, revenge narrative if you like that. But
I like
more importantly, they just don't have Yordan Alvarez. And without Yordan Alvarez, that lineup is very unintimidating. I think that I really like the under in that game. I think that the Mets offense is going to really struggle against Framber Valdez, but I think the Astros are going to struggle maybe even worse against Verlander. So 7,300 just feels like an insanely disrespectful price tag for Justin Verlander.
It was when I was scrolling down this morning writing up the slate, I just assumed, I forgot who was pitching for the Mets tonight, but I just assumed it was someone terrible because I hadn't seen their name yet. And then it was like, oh man, Verlander's $7,300. So yeah, if you're looking for someone under 8K, it's Detmers, it's Verlander, and it's another guy we've already talked about tonight, Johan Oviedo, who could just strike out 7 or 8 guys, and he's only $6,200 tonight.
I'll throw Cutter Crawford in there too.
Sure.
Just because you think there's a chance he could get a win, or like what's drawing you to Cutter Crawford?
He's a good strikeout pitcher, and he's, like 5,200 or something like that. But if you look at his numbers for the past, month or so, they've been pretty good. He had a 2.84 ERA in May. His K per 9, is right around a strikeout per inning. Like he's not a bad pitcher.
And he's built up. Like he threw 80 pitches his last start. He's actually a starter now.
Right. Yeah. He could get 5 innings with 5 strikeouts or so. And, if you can add a win, that's acceptable at 5,400.
Anyone else that you're drawn to tonight? LaMarca doesn't have to be a pitcher, obviously.
No, my focus primarily on this slate was on the gambling, the sports betting side.
Yeah.
I do think it's a very interesting pitching slate. We talked about a lot of different guys. I really like George Kirby for Seattle, like GT mentioned. I think he's super interesting tonight. The total on that game is down to 7.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In Yankee Stadium, right? Which is a bandbox, but that's how good Cole and Kirby have been and how bad these two offenses have been. So it should be a fun night of baseball.
Here, Koff, I'll give you some offensive players you can put in your lineups. So I would say my 2 favorite positional players, Jose Ramirez has just been looking like Jose Ramirez again. In June, 71 plate appearances. He's slashing 308, 352, 615 with a 156 WRC plus. He's actually done some stuff against left-handed pitching. Like his numbers this season against lefties are awful. He's always been a better left-handed hitter than a right-handed hitter, but still, it's generally he's above average at both. He's starting to get back to that. And that's, look, I don't want to say it's super important tonight because anyone the Athletics put out there is like a bad pitcher, but they are specifically doing the like Tampa Bay Rays-esque, let's start a left-handed opener and then transition to a right-handed bulk guy, which, sure, fine enough in theory, but Jose Ramirez has the platoon advantage in both those spots against Waldichuk and against Medina. So I think Ramirez super hot in a really nice spot. And then another guy who started the season slow, has been underwhelming, let's be polite about it, the last couple seasons, but who's looking like the former version of himself, Christian Yelich. Yelich in June, 74 plate appearances, hitting 333 with an OPS over 1,000, 170 WRC plus. We already talked about Ryan Nelson, how underwhelming he's been, how maybe not long for the majors he is currently. So far this season, Nelson has a 434 opponent WOBA against left-handed batters. Yelich, Rowdy Tellez. There's a couple cheaper left-handed bats in that lineup whose names I'm not. Jesse Winker's back. He's probably hitting second tonight. You could probably toss him into a stack as well. I just think the Brewers and Diamondbacks, to be fair, have some run scoring potential tonight. Both these pitchers do not fare well against left-handed bats.
I have wagers on 3 players to hit home runs tonight, and 2 of them are Yelich and Ramirez.
There we go.
Very nice. Very nice. What when you're doing those, by the way, are you just straight plays? You're not messing around with homer parlays or round robins or anything like that? You're just doing the
I don't feel the need to add more variance to what's already a pretty variant bet.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. Just, I didn't know if you're, one of those guys chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Listen, I am just happy if, every month my balance is just a little bit higher than it was, and we just keep working in the right direction.
Yeah, and the night green. That's all that ultimately matters.
Yeah, that unfortunately, I haven't had a ton of great nights. Although my guy Wyndham winning the U.S. Open was definitely a nice little hit to the account.
You gonna get yourself parlay that right into the what's next, the Travelers Championship?
I got to see who all my golf guys tell me to play.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Although I want it to be known, on Friday's show, I gave out Austin Eckroat to finish in the top 10 at plus 1,800, and he finished tied 10th. So it wasn't a true 18-1 payout, but we got a winner from my brain strictly for golf.
It's all right. Listen, you're gonna get chopped every once in a while. Happened to me with the I had a first round leader ticket on Ricky Fowler, and of course, you know, he was there. He tied with Xander Schauffele, but
yeah,
whatever. I'll take the profit.
Oh yeah, you're still smiling on a day like that.
Yeah. He was like, I don't even know, plus 5,500 or something like that.
Koff, you strike me though as a guy who, if you like someone in golf and it's like a Tuesday night like this, or even a Wednesday night, you'll just take the highest favorite on the MLB slate and parlay that together to get slightly better odds. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think I've ever parlayed golf and baseball together.
Okay.
It sounds like fun. I'm not above it. I just don't think I've ever done
I feel like
it.
I just gave you a new betting philosophy.
Yeah, you may have. No, what I like to do, not now because it's really just baseball going on. But when you're like into I don't know, I guess it would have to be April. You know, playoffs are basically getting underway in basketball and hockey. That's when I like to kind of screw around and get like, all right, here's a basketball winner, a hockey winner, a baseball winner, put those all together, see what happens. Just to keep myself engaged, keep myself
wild
interested.
Man.
Oh yeah, I like to live dangerously. Clearly, is in the couple minutes we have left before we get out of here. I know that right now it's kind of the silly season in terms of basketball and more rumors.
And we pull up the draft odds. Pull up draft odds.
I can pull up draft odds. Absolutely, do that
because the one thing you're starting to hear is some whispers about Scoot Henderson going number 2, which he was, you know, kind of widely expected to be the number 2 overall pick. Then Brandon Miller from Alabama started getting a bunch of steam, and now it's trending back towards Scoot. So I think that's interesting. You know, obviously Victor Wembanyama is going number 1. He's quite possibly the greatest prospect in the history of basketball, but that number 2 pick, I think Brandon Miller still makes the most sense for Charlotte, right? Like, you already have a ball dominant guard in LaMelo Ball. I don't know if Scoot Henderson is the best natural pairing for him. So I kind of like Brandon Miller at these numbers, but from what you're hearing, it's kind of like Charlotte really likes Scoot. So they may end up just doing it anyway.
What I would be curious to know your opinion on, actually, while we're talking about these guys, I saw it was making its rounds on Twitter earlier today, but it was someone saying that they would actually pick, they would bet against Wembanyama to win Rookie of the Year. Not simply because of the new requirement, minimum games requirement. It's 65. It's like, of course, if he plays it, he's the winner. But I am skeptical if he's actually, the guy of his size and
I mean, he just played a more grueling season than any other prospect in this draft can say. But
it's still not more grueling than an NBA season.
No, of course. But I'm just saying, like, he has proven that he can play at a higher level than any of these other dudes have. And I'm not
healthy. I'm not saying I would make the bet. I just thought it was an interesting argument.
Is he going to play in the World Cup this summer? Probably not. Eh?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, but probably not.
So I feel like he's the only guy who's draft eligible who has a chance of making their national team. But I doubt he plays. But I mean, if you really want to buy into that narrative and keep adding layers, I mean, I guess if he's going to go off and play, I don't know, 2 weeks in like strange gymnasiums in the summer, I don't know. I guess you could add some like risk factors there, but.
And I just want to say, like, I understand it's fun to be the hot take guy, to be the guy who's going out on the limb and saying that, Victor Wembanyama is overhyped or whatever. The guy is the truth. And
of course,
it's
like,
not
this take
long.
Wasn't even he's overhyped. It was just, will he meet the minimum required games?
Yes, I hear what you're saying, But I'm saying that I think that part of that take comes from people looking for an excuse to not want to buy into the sensationalism, right?
Sure. And
but I'm going to say that
too,
within
Matt,
3 years, this guy's going to be the best player in the NBA.
And I also think, like, when you look at what his odds are to be the number one pick, and obviously that's partly baked into the fact that we've just heard for the last 18 months that he's going to be the number one pick. We just know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more variables when it comes to winning Rookie of the Year, but when someone is that overwhelmingly the best prospect in their class, which is what those odds are saying he is, for him to only be minus 225 actually doesn't seem all that crazy. Like, I think there's still an opportunity to just bet Wembanyama to win Rookie of the Year.
I agree.
Like, Scoot Henderson at plus 350. If you're betting on Scoot Henderson only because you think someone is going to get injured, like, think about that. Think about the perspective of that. Like, Wembanyama, Jesus, my mouth isn't working anymore. Victor to get injured would be more than plus 350.
Yeah.
I think, like, when you think about last year's race, and now granted that year was not a particularly exciting one from a rookie perspective, but part of the reason why I think Paolo Banchero ended up running away from it is because he entered as the number one pick and was expected to win. You look at his final numbers and they're not great, but he was the guy that was expected to be the best player in the class because he was the first pick. And I think that carried a lot of weight in voters' minds. So it's going to be tough, I think, for Wembanyama to not win the award unless, like you said, Kaufman, he just doesn't play enough games. But I have seen nothing from his, career so far that suggests he is a greater injury risk than, other players in this class.
So we got to get out of here. There's a Madden Sim on the way featuring the virtual Buccaneers and the virtual Panthers coming your way in just a few minutes. But and if anyone is just joining us, I see a good number of you in the YouTube chat, so maybe you missed this earlier. This is the final week of the slate here on the DraftKings channels, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. And that in mind, when can people expect to see the two of you again this week if they want to get their last fill other than obviously the sweat and whatever other programming, strictly the slate? When can they find you again?
I'll be on Thursday's show, I think, unless something changes.
Good.
And I will be here on Friday, sending us off into the great abyss.
Singing us off as only you can. And I expect to be back Thursday as well. Maybe Friday. We'll see. I tempted to let Lamarca and Moose have that show and just take us to
it'll be a lot less
unknown.
Nostalgic if it's just the two of us.
That's probably
we won't have to have
regular show.
We won't have to deal with 15 minutes of Adam Kaufman waxing poetic.
All right, time to go. Thanks to Eamon. Thanks to Undercover Boss Tom, GT, Lamarca. I'm Kaufman. We'll see you later.